you're in that light. There, yeah, you're in that. Yeah. Look at it. It's completely. You just stay there, and you just watch the magic. All right, you ready over there?
Yep.
Okay, good. Me too. Welcome to A Late Show, everybody. I'm your host, Stephen Colbert. People are still protesting all across America, and I mean all across America. The only thing Americans agree on this much is pumpable cheese, which is only slightly less toxic than systemic racism. People are enraged by the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer a little more than a week ago, and the fact that he was charged only with third-degree murder, and that the other cops on the scene weren't charged with anything at all. Enter Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Ellison took over the case on Sunday, and today he announced he will elevate charges against the former Minneapolis police officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck to second-degree murder, and will add charges of aiding and abetting murder against the other 3 officers at the scene. So, activism works. Justice is possible. Easy peasy, hold protests for 9 days straight in 380 American cities. Squeezy. Now, the night Donald Trump was elected, you might recall, I was somewhat emotional. I started drinking, and someday I plan to stop. What I was worried about deep down is that Trump is a dictator fanboy. He is a lifetime subscriber to Tiger beat down the protesters. And now we're teetering dangerously close to Trump making his dreams our nightmare. On Monday, just so Trump could hobble across the street for a photo op, military police and park rangers fired rubber bullets, tear gas, and flash grenades at peaceful protesters. It was like a little Tiananmen Square, or in Trump's case, Tiny Man Square. And today, Trump went on the Fox News radio, where you can only hear him lying, and explained it wasn't really as bad as it really was.
That story was fake. They didn't use tear gas. They moved him out.
Remind me never to ask for Trump's help when I'm moving. Okay, Steve, I boxed up your wine glasses and your old DVDs. Now, run like hell and shove a wet rag in your mouth because it's gas time. You promised me pizza, buddy. No surprise. Trump blamed the protesters for everything.
They're violent people in many cases, bad people, okay? A lot of bad people. We have a lot of proof and information and proof.
Really? Because it sounds like you're full of crap and bull and crap. Reportedly, Trump went medieval on the protesters in part because he was upset, humiliated really, about the TV people revealing that he hid in a bunker over the weekend. But he said, nah.
The reports were they were so worried they brought you downstairs in the White House to a bunker. What could you tell me Sunday night was like for you and your family?
Well, it was a false report. I wasn't down. I went down during the day, and I was there for a tiny, little short period of time, and it was much more for an inspection.
That is an all-time great excuse. So he was just checking to make sure the bunker was okay. I didn't poop my pants. I just ran diagnostics on my boxers to see if they were load-bearing. They are. Now, Trump insists, despite the fireworks and the human rights abuse, his visit to the church was a rousing success.
Most religious leaders loved it. I heard Franklin Graham this morning, thought it was great. I heard many other people think it was great. The church leaders loved that I went there with the Bible.
Well, it started out as a Jughead comic, but Ivanka switched it out at the last second. Hey, I need something to read if one of those God guys starts jabbering on about loving your enemies, because for me, that's a lot of people. Trump also made this surprising claim.
As you know, as a Republican, I'm doing very well with African Americans and with the vote, in polls and everything.
That's why they're in the streets. They're celebrating how much they love me. And I'm joining the party by tossing them a 6-pack of love gas. Those are just tears of joy. So, just how crazy are things right now? An anonymous source in the administration felt the need to push back on reports that Trump wanted to use tanks against the protesters, insisting the president wasn't ordering tanks to roll down the streets, but was inquiring about the kind of hardware that could be used in military shows of force. And at one point, Trump threw out the word tanks. That's an interesting defense. Your Honor, I didn't order nobody to kill Joey the Snake. I was just inquiring about the general nature of accidents. Then I just threw out the word wood chipper. The same official also floated the theory that instead of an order, Trump was just free associating, saying tank is just one of the military words he knows. Wow. The commander-in-chief just throws out one of the military words he knows. I believe he knows 5. Tank, bullet, Colonel Sanders, Captain Crunch, and Bone Spur. Now, Trump isn't the only one getting criticism for his fascist photo op. So our Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, seen here trying to remember where he last saw his integrity, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, seen here being vanilly. You see, one of the hallmarks of American democracy is the U.S. Armed Forces' proud tradition of remaining out of politics to emphasize civilian control of the military. Yet, on the way to this photo op that, again, was preceded by attacking peaceful protesters, Esper and Milley walked with Trump across the street. It reminds me of the old joke. Why did the defense secretary and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs cross the road? Because the president is a chicken. The condemnation of this is bipartisan. A Republican congressional aide, who's also a veteran, said that Esper and Milley have squandered the moral legitimacy of a nearly 245-year-old institution in a single farcical late spring promenade. They have no honor, and to hell with them both. Buddy, they work for Trump. They're already in hell. Now, yesterday, Esper defended the indefensible, saying, I didn't know where I was going. You're the Secretary of Defense. And your defense is that you didn't know where you were going? The rest of us could see exactly where you were going. It rhymes with Yahtzee. Though not as fun for the whole family. Esper scrambled at the edge of the ice again today.
I did know that following the president's remarks on Monday evening, that many of us were going to join President Trump and review the damage in Lafayette Park and at St. John's Episcopal Church. What I was not aware of was exactly where we were going when we arrived at the church and what the plans were once we got there.
Oh, that's a sign of a great military leader, like Henry V.
Once more into the breach, dear friends. Although I'm not aware exactly which breach and what the plans are when we get there.
God, Brana is good. It's really good. Esper has also gotten a lot of criticism for telling governors they had to quell protests by American citizens by dominating the battle space. He had an explanation for that, too.
Earlier this week, I was quoted as saying the best way to get street violence under control was by dominating the battle space. And probably all of you who cover the Pentagon hear us use this phrase often. It's something we use day in and day out. It is part of our military lexicon that I grew up with.
Exactly. People who grew up with a military lexicon use that phrase in all kinds of situations. Natalie, you're the love of my life. Will you make me the happiest man on earth by letting me dominate your battle space? Esper floundered on.
In retrospect, I would use different wording so as not to distract from the more important matters at hand or allow some to suggest that we are militarizing the issue.
Yes, we must not allow some to suggest he's militarizing just because he's using the military. Shame on some. I will dominate them in the battle space. Then Esper dropped this bombshell.
The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now. I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act.
And he's been fired and replaced with a cardboard cutout of RoboCop. Now, if a military crackdown seems familiar to you, you may work for the CIA. Because one former analyst said of Trump's response to the protests, I've seen this kind of violence. This is what autocrats do. This is what happens in countries before a collapse. And if you've seen Trump, you know he is always on the brink of collapse. He looks like a Jenga tower about 12 moves in. And it's not just the military, because now ICE and border agents are being deployed to help with protest enforcement. Oh, good. Let's cool things down with some famously reasonable and laid-back ICE agents. If that doesn't work, they can de-escalate by sending in some rabid badgers strapped with running chainsaws. The border police are supposed to help guard facilities and conduct arrests, but when asked for more specifics, neither ICE nor Customs and Border Patrol was able to provide details on the number of agents or other resources they have deployed. Look, we don't like to fuss over details, as long as, at the end of the day, the cage is full of kids. Job well done. These agencies have cool toys that regular law enforcement doesn't. To provide live video protests in Minneapolis, CBP flew a Predator drone. Oh, nothing says protecting free speech like Predator. Can't wait for them to roll out their line of xenomorph info booths and Thanos brand medical tents. Getting rid of protesters is a snap.
Infinity Slayer!
The administration has also authorized the DEA to conduct covert surveillance of George Floyd protests. Mahalo, fellow rabble-rousers. Can anyone here score me a gramule of your most illicit jazz cigarettes? 3 cheers for the underclass and fudge the police. So if you're out there protesting, please be aware you could be facing agents from ICE, CBP, and the DEA. For that matter, the IRS, the EPA, and the FDA, who will, of course, determine which protesters are richest in riboflavin. These federal tactics are sending a loud and clear message to local police forces, too, who've been coming down hard on peaceful protests. Cops have been meeting unarmed protesters while decked out in full military riot gear, like yesterday in D.C., where mass troops stood guard outside the Lincoln Memorial. To which Lincoln replied, "Oh, now you're going to protect me? Little late, fellas. I hope everyone else enjoyed the end of the play." Too soon? Too soon. That is a heartbreaking image. The Lincoln Memorial is a historic site for peaceful protests. It's where the Women's March started in 2018. It's where Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech. It's where Forrest Gump reunited with Jenny after returning home from Vietnam. They were like peas and carrots again. It was so beautiful. And that wasn't the only display of massive force in D.C. Large, armored military vehicles drove down the streets of the nation's capital. Secretary Esper, do you see where we're going now? It's so close, you don't need a ride. You could walk. Although, really, more of a goose step. And just last night in New York City, thousands of protesters attempted to cross the Manhattan Bridge after curfew, but ended up trapped on the bridge with police waiting on both ends. Marchers were stuck with no way out for over an hour. That's horrifying. The only reason New Yorkers should be trapped on a bridge for an hour is if they're in traffic trying to get to their co-worker's wife's baby shower. I'm so sorry, Katie. We're going to give you the cutest little onesie. It's some smocking on the front, a little embroidered roses. We turned it into a mask. Of course, when New Yorkers are in trouble, there's one man to look to, and he was there on the bridge last night. Spider-Man! Spider-Man, Spider-Man, he can dodge a tear gas can. Is he woke? Listen, guys, he believes that all black lives matter. Here comes the Spider-Man! We have a great show for you tonight. Yeah, even better than my singing just now. My guest is Charlemagne the God, but when we return, meanwhile, join us, won't you?